There's a lot of things going on right now, and they all add up to what can be some incredible crappie fishing.
A couple of those variables are water temperature. Now you're looking for something around 60 degrees, mid 60s is when they're going to start bedding up. Another thing that's going on right now is so much bait is pushing up into the shallows right now. Shiners tend to spawn right now. A number of other native bait fish tend to spawn in these bulrushes. So it's convenient for the crappies because this is when they can get their energy because they're about to spawn, so they can feed heavily on these little minnows. You know, you can catch crappies a variety of ways when they're doing this because they're aggressive, they're mad, you know, they're protective. But since they're keying in on little minnows, we're trying micro crankbaits, little micro jerkbaits, if you will. And these do a really good job of mimicking the prey that's running through these reeds right now. And like I said, I grew up crappie fishing. I've done it a lot of different ways, but this is a really fun way to do it. And I've realized it's a really good way to control the way the bait works. Typically, you're gonna use like a little jig head in a plastic or maybe a minnow, but a lead head sinks. And there's not a lot that you can do to stop the rate of fall. And this thing sinks as well. It's slow sinking, but if I keep my tip up, I can let that thing rise again a little bit. So it's a good way to stay in front of the crappies, especially when you got one cornered in a little clump of bulrushes. So we've identified a little pack of crappies here, and we're gonna just poke and prod a couple of them out of there. See, I watched that one just creep out of the reeds, and it's crazy how hard they react to this little thing and how well you can control it. I mean, you're only in a foot or two of water. And like I said, that, you know, controlling the rate of the sink really keeps it in there longer. Now that wasn't a giant, and there's bigger ones in here, but that's how we start the day. The bulrushes aren't very well established yet, so they're fairly easy to fish through. Even, you know, it's a little scary when you're throwing treble hooks in weeds, but these are fairly brittle right now. They just break right apart. And I'm also using 6-pound test as opposed to maybe a lighter 4-pound test for these crappies, and it's braid. So I've got a little bit more mustard to pull them out. Just crazy. So I'm keeping my tip high and just kind of letting that thing sink slightly, and then I pop it up again, and that brings it back up about another foot. Like I said, it just hangs in one spot. I'm picking out little pockets in the reeds. So when I was a kid, and still one of my favorite ways to catch crappies is just a bare hook and a plastic, because the buoyancy of the bait, you know, it's almost the same principle. You can just let it hang in one place. And at a certain point, if you want to get that bait moving again or elicit a strike, you have to move horizontally. So that's been kind of an interesting learning process for me, is like actually being brave enough to throw this bait with treble hooks up in the bulrushes and finding out that it's really good at staying in one place. You take a look at this bait and you think that it's, you know, a cast and wind kind of thing. But I've found that you can work it almost exactly like a jig, and I'm having a blast doing it this way. Here we go. I don't know if you could see that, but I was just really patient in this one little gap in the bulrushes. Again, that's gonna happen over and over. They've got paper thin, soft mouths and have a tendency to rip hooks out. But I was just working this one area slow and slow and slow, and I watched him coming, and I held steady, and he finally committed. So there's really no use for electronics in this game, but like I said, a really valuable thing is water temperature. That's gonna be your indicator during the time period that the fish are moving up, staging and feeding heavily on these minnows, and then ultimately spawning. You wanna get them before they spawn. That's when they're the most active, and that's when they're the most willing to chase baits, not just catching them off of their bed, which is a little immoral. So you want to watch your temperature. And another key thing with having electronics is your map. And it might sound silly because what do you need to know on your map when you're in 2 feet of water? But waypoints are going to be a critical thing. Sure, you can line up your spots with a dock or a tree, but having that waypoint that you can just drive right to and know where they are day after day is really helpful. Sink in, here comes one.
Boom!
Oh, look at this too. All right, look at this. This is a good indication of how clean they can eat that thing, you know. There's always like this misconception that you need to use small baits for panfish, but if they're mad, they don't have a problem taking something fairly large, especially if you want to weed out the smaller ones. And I really like adopting this way of kind of pitching the bait and delivering it at a low angle. That way it can be a little bit more accurate. I'm staying out of the wind that way too. Fishing that little weightless plastic with just a bare hook, it was really hard to make those accurate casts. If there's a little bit of wind like there is right now, you know, sometimes the wind will take that thing and you're in the thickest bulrushes possible, you know, when you're off the fish. So this thing, I'm able to make really accurate casts in it, just target casts and basically doing a little low angle pitch. You know, another thing with kind of controlling your bait with the wind, this thing's got a lip on it, so it tends to want to bite a little bit more instead of get pushed away. And I'm not using it for diving. Like I said, I like to keep it, I like to use that for keeping it up. But there's one with the shallow lip that you can fish on more of a horizontal presentation. If I was making a parallel cast and trying to find fish, I'd use that horizontal bait. But I found that I like this one for keeping it in one place. Bam. Just calling the shots right now. And now the wind is lying down and we can kind of see the fish a little better, get a little better lay of the land. This is a fun way to do it. There we go. Pulled that one out quick. See how quickly we can get another here. They're really fired up. Ooh, that was cool. I just deflected off a bulrush and that's what kind of got him to change his mind. He was kind of surfing behind it. Ate that bait from behind. It's kind of the nice thing about having 6 hooks on a bait, a little reassurance. You know, if they're really eating it, they're taking it head first. And the back treble will often kind of give you a little safety net. This one's coming in out of nowhere. Wow, look at that one's a good one. Oh, stay pinned, stay pinned. Boat flip him low because I knew he's gonna pop off hooked on the back treble. But that's an example of just making an accurate cast to a nice fish here. This one's just getting ready to spawn. It's black. Usually that's an indication that it's a male. But when their colors start to fade a little bit, you know they've been spending a lot of time in the reeds. So look around, see if you can find these little ultralight Rapalas, little ultralight crankbaits, because they're not only just crankbaits, they're a really good way to target cast and catch specific fish in specific spots.